Hey everyone, I just got to Dallas Fort Worth Airport after the conclusion of the Widows Retreat. And if you have been following me on my socials at all or just been in my life, I have been basically like spam texting you about this event because I've been so excited and a little nervous about how it would go. And if you don't know the story yet, I met the founder of the nonprofit Widow Goals, Michelle Ebersol, and we met through her podcast, Widowed Too Soon. And the last couple of years, I've been on her podcast a few times, talk about different topics. And this last September, when she and I were getting ready to record our latest episode, she goes, "Hey, I've really been thinking about how I need to do a retreat, but I really don't want to, and it's overwhelming." And she'd done some smaller ones before, but she had a vision to do a bigger one. And I just was like, first of all, I'd love to go on this retreat. Second of all, I'd love to help you plan it because my current season, I had some more margin for that kind of stuff. And so she goes, "Really? Okay." She doesn't even know me besides our podcast interviews. And so we just jump in and we have been meeting weekly, often bi-weekly, lots of texts, lots of emails, lots of phone calls. And I just kind of became administrator for her, tried to, help through every aspect of it. But the thing I was the most excited about was I told her I wanted to lead worship for it. And here's what's crazy is she doesn't know me, didn't know me. I sent her like a little scratch recording of me playing. She's like, "That sounds great." And later I thought, she's a little crazy. Just saying, okay, I'm gonna trust this girl. But for those of you who already know me, you know that worship leading is one of my passions and a big part of my heart. And since Matt passed away, and also especially since moving to Cheyenne 7 months ago, I haven't really had very many opportunities to get to lead worship. And leading worship in a retreat space, especially with widow sisters, is such a beautiful honor. And I took it so seriously and practiced and planned and just really prayed about like what type of songs would lead the whole weekend. And because I led worship 2 times a day for like 4 days straight. And it was such a joy to get to share my heart, to get to make space for God's presence. And then we're getting ready to go on this retreat last week, and we start getting all these news pings that there's going to be some crazy weather. What should we do? And so people start canceling, kind of jumping in and out, in and out, in and out. We finally talked to the camp where we were going to have this in Dallas, and they were like, "We're prepared to have you come." Um, and Michelle and I kept going back and forth, like, should we cancel this thing? What do we do? And both of us just felt like we're going to go for this. We have been planning this. We feel like God has set apart this time. And we had 72 widows registered to come. But even in the shuffle of last week for a couple of days, wondering, okay, are we going to have enough people who want to come to pay for this because we put money down on all these event spaces? 58 widows still showed up. And I got to say, that's a huge deal, guys. When you're used to traveling with your spouse, maybe with your whole family, and all of a sudden you're faced with, I got to do this alone. It's a lot. And my first time traveling on a plane with my kids after Matt passed away, it was just like so stressful. And so we were just praying, 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 praying that God would make way and, maybe lessen some of the weather that's been hitting the area. And I just got on the plane and I said, "Okay, God, I'm going to trust you." And that was like the first of many, many things throughout the weekend of I just got to trust him to take care of lots of details. And despite how many hours we had put in and planned and tried to be careful, Michelle and I, and then the rest of the speaking team, and then also all the women attending, we just all had to learn to be so flexible. Can I tell you, I'm so glad we still said yes because 58 people still showed up, even with the uncertainty of like, hey, we might get snowed in or we might need to stay another day or so. And I just kept thinking, okay, I'm going to leave my flight as it is. I kept getting all these pings like, if you want to change it, you can. I'm going to leave it. We're going to see how this works out. And so every day as the weather changed, we just had to shift our schedules and all sorts of things. But I have to say, each day it felt like God was able to do what he wanted to do. And I got lots of extra time, like one-on-one time with all these new women I was meeting. And I personally actually did not know anybody when I showed up, but it felt like I was just meeting all of these sisters for the first time where our hearts had already been knitted together. And I know it sounds crazy. Like, why would anybody sign up to go to a widow's retreat? It sounds depressing and sad. But I have to say, these spaces have been absolutely transformative for my personal healing. And so I knew that I also wanted to give back because you know what? When we give back, even from our pain, we heal. We really do. And it's God's economy of time and resources and space. And I have seen that over and over in my life, and even more so now in this season, that when I give of myself in these ways where I feel like God's asking me to, he returns that to me, that time, but also he uses it to help heal others. And I am only where I am because of other widows, especially coming alongside me and showing me there is so much hope. You can do this. And so I feel like I am called to give that hope back in many different ways through my music, through my writing, through being available. I think I am wanting to start a widow community in Cheyenne, where I now live, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Yeah. So lots of good stuff. So let's see here. I had to learn how to be flexible. And then, what's also cool is all these generous things just started happening. Um, People showed up with all of these delicious snacks and desserts. And the camp we were staying at was like, if you need to stay more days, we'll feed you, we'll house you. And then at the very end of the retreat, there was an anonymous person who agreed to cover any extra costs, make sure the retreat was completely paid for so that, any of the widows who were worried about money from extra travel and things like that would be taken care of. Like, what do you do? That's so cool. Um, and yeah, and then, the worship itself, like getting to lead again, just felt such like home for me. Such a way for me to get to worship God in that way. And I have to tell you, there's nothing more powerful than standing in a room with people who have gone through profound loss and hearing them praise God at the top of their lungs, hearing them praise him anyways. Because I have to say, like, after Matt passed away, I did go through quite a season where I couldn't even sing. I I would kind of try to sit in church services and I couldn't handle it and I couldn't stay there for very long for quite some time. And sometimes that grief is just so heavy and so much. And, I've had a story of how God brought back my song and has put me into these spaces again. But I knew that it was going to be a tender place because we had a lot of widows coming who I think we even had one widow who was just widowed 2 months ago. She was so brave to come. And so for me, it was just amazing to get to offer that and be in the room with all of these women singing their hearts out in like the peace and presence of Jesus. And I also got to share a song I wrote that I have a goal to record this way. And the song is called Shores. And it's one that I wrote when Matt was sick. And I just felt like I needed to share it and share the story behind it. And it was such a beautiful confirmation of so many people being like, that song was just for me. Like it was for my season. I want my kids to hear it. Um, and so, yeah, that was awesome. Like that's been in my heart for a while. And I think this is going to be the year for me to figure out how to record it. And so, and then I got to share my story. I got to, 'cause some of you know, I do a lot of grief work already. I am working on formalizing that. I've started my master's in clinical counseling at Colorado Christian University, and I start with my cohort this summer. But even previous to that, I have had a heart for learning about grief, and I teach and walk people through grief prayer. And I got to walk through that with 20 women this weekend. teach them about how our hearts grieve, how our brains grieve, and that ways we can intentionally and gently move through our grief so it's not always just a crazy tidal wave that takes you out every single time. And what a blessing to get to just kind of cut to the chase, share what I have. And I'm going to having some follow up Zoom calls with a lot of the widows I met to pray with them individually. It just makes me excited. So yeah, and I got some confirmations like that this is where I want to be. I want to be involved in healing grief work, working with future clients, friends and family, just being a part of how God really does want to walk with us daily through our grief and our sadnesses. And he has healing for us. And it was beautiful to be in a retreat space that was just concentrated, like kind of like a shot in the arm of vitamins to help people move forward in their healing journey. Plus, I just love retreats anyways. I've always loved women's retreats, like getting away for a little bit, time to think and process and, just take a step back from daily life. Those spaces are just rejuvenating for my soul. So I did get a few confirmations that I want to move forward with grief work. I need to be stepping more intentionally out into some creative aspects of myself that I've kind of put on the back burner. Some art, working on my own music writing, and I think it's time for me to work on my book. Yeah, I'm interested in writing like a memoir of some of my experiences, and I'm also wanting to just build a widow tribe too for where I live and continue with my podcast. So I think God has set me up for some really cool things this year, making space for it. And thank you for praying, for giving, for sending, for family and friends who like helped with all of Brian and I's kids and just every aspect of it. I am grateful and thankful and hopeful. And I know that there were many widows who got a shot of encouragement and much needed healing this weekend. And what an honor it was to be a part of that. So thanks for listening to my update. I thought it'd be easier to send a video about it because I'd love, if you want to talk more individually, absolutely. But I thought this would be a good place to start. um, Appreciate you all. Bye.